I will start and go on. Thank you very much for being here in this presentation. I will present the paper titled Understand the Use of Digital Payments in Brazil, an analysis from the perspective of digital divide measured. I am the one author, and Professor Eduardo Diniz and one of co-author the paper. And this short presentation, I hope, will focus on the main points here. The introduction, discuss about the digital payment adoption and show our research questions that guide our paper. The IST household survey will make a brief introduction of the data set used in this research. And we finally finish with methodological design, main findings, and some conclusion here. So the main statement present in here is the financial service plays a vital role for reducing social inequalities and promote economic growth. So we clearly state the importance of the access to financial service as an instrument to promote social equality and economic growth. But at the same time, although we can agree with this relationship, we see that more than 30% of the world population is still financially conservative. It means they have few access to basic financial services such as payment, credit, insurance, and so on. And for sure that ICT can have a potential to expand the uses of financial service to include the group of people that normally do not have access to this kind of service. And in particularly, mobile has an important role in this discussion. For one side, because mobile is quite widespread, even in the most poor communities and most low-income group that has access to mobile device. But sometimes the mobile device is a platform, for example, to create new solutions or innovations that relate, for example, platforms, mobile payment solutions, and so on. And we have a very different case of the use of mobile payment to improve digital financial inclusion. For example, the M-Pesa in Kenya, Gcash, and smart money in Philippines, so on. But then important, although we understand the importance of the relationship between mobile, the access to mobile, and the potential use to access financial service, it's important to emphasize that it's not take for granted. That's not automatically that you have access to a digital mobile platform and you can use this kind of service. One example of this is the case of Brazil. You see in Brazil, we have a 74% of internet users. It means if you compare for another developing country, you see how the high number of internet users in the country, 90%, almost 100% of these users access internet using mobile device. But at the same time, what we see is only 37% of these internet users use any kind of digital payment service. So you see the imbalance and the challenge, for example, to discuss adoption of this kind of service in a country like Brazil. And particularly in the literature of digital payment adoption, we see a variety of studies that use technology acceptance model, traditional ones, TAN, UTAUT, and so on. And it's not a critic of this kind of device or this kind of model, but what we see normally, this model focuses very much in terms of the factor and psychological aspects, for example, user perceptions, beliefs, attitude to technology. But sometimes disregard another dimensions important, for example, the availability of technological resource or even readiness. In these dimensions is typically and consistently discussed in digital divide literature. So what we see too is there are a lack of studies that analyze other factors or other dimensions, for example, the social factors, the access to the internet, or even the digital skills as antecedent for the use of digital payment. So in our paper, what we try to do is to add the discussion to analyze the phenomena of use of digital payment, but consider from the perspective of digital divide measures. That's why is how the research question is posted in this way. How is the use of digital payment influenced by social demographic factors, conditions, internet access, and digital skills? This picture is not shown in the paper, so first of all, but I think to summarize the main idea what tested and analyzed in the paper. What we see, we address the main characteristics involved in digital divide studies. The first one is the internet access condition. But here, we are not focused on the dichotomy between those who have an access or those who have not access, but we try to qualify, to understand the condition of the internet access. So we are focused more the kind of resource or kind of device that people use to have an experience use the internet. To personalize the idea, we used here 3 different groups. Those who connect internet only through computers platforms, those who connect to the internet using only mobile device, and a third group that we call as a multi-platform one, that it both that enjoy the both kind of device. At the same time, we address an aspect related to demographic factors. Here we consider the most cited dimension in digital divide literature. Normally, these demographic factors are called as determinants of digital divide, and the digital skills dimension. Here, when we see digital skills, we are not focused on the technical skills to use the internet. It's not focused, for example, using a spreadsheet, an editor, but we are focused ability, for example, to use the internet independent of device used. So it involves operational skills, but at the same time involve information skills, ability to look for the information at the internet, communications, use any kind of applications to communicate on the web, and content creation, or ability to create content online and share with others. And we have one dependent variable here is the digital payment. There's a binary variable, use or not use digital payment in this context. In terms of methodological procedure, what we do is a quantitative approach using the microdata from the ICT household survey as a nationwide survey that measured the use of the internet by the Brazilian population of 10 years age or older. But in particularly here, we are using a subset of this data set. We focus on the only internet users. We are not focused those who not are considered internet users, and whose age is 16 years or more. Consider that what kind of service we are evaluating financial digital payment effectively. And to personalize our analysis, we use the binary logistic regression. Just to have some idea, in this next slide, we'll see the characterization or a main idea of the main characteristic of our sample. The first of all, what we see, we classify, we calculate this percentage, consider only those who are only our sample. It means only internet users. So what we see here is a predominance number of internet users in the urban area. That's most common factor cited in the digital divide studies. At the same time, when we see in the age group, although there is no big difference in terms of percentage, what we see in the oldest group, we see a drop in number of internet users for only 9%. So the idea of the age gap, the highest the age, the lower the number of internet users is not so clear in this picture. But in terms of gender, we see a kind of balances between male and female. For sure that we have a more women in our sample. And in terms of social class, there are predominance members of class AB. It means upper classes and middle classes, this class D. Just to clarify, class AB is upper, C, middle, and D, lower classes or working classes, low income group. And the last variable here is device used to access the internet. The first picture, what we see is that the predominance and the relevance of mobile here. But maybe this indicator does not show correctly the dimension of access to the internet. What we see in the next slide is maybe reflects more the dynamic. As you can see, we divide this 3 groups, those who connect only through mobile, only through computer, and multi-platform. If you get this, analyze the class AB, it means upper classes. What we see there is a predominance of individuals that connect using multi-platform, combine the beneficial of mobility from mobile device and the immersive use from computer. As you can see in the first group, the mobile has a specific role as a complementary device to connect the internet. It means they are not only the group, the individuals of this group access to the internet using mobile, but any other kind of device too. But in the class D, what we see is a different one. You see, for example, 86%, almost 90% of these internet users connect exclusively through mobile. What we see a clear effect of the mobile leapfrogging, a substitution of the use of the internet exclusively and only through mobile. And you have some implications in that. The first one you see is the digital skills. This graph did not show correctly, but what we see is that we have in general, lower level of digital skills. Maybe in communication dimension, the score is higher. And for sure, it's completely aligned with when you consider, for example, the most activities performed online, for example, send a message via instant message application, for example, WhatsApp, using social network sites. And when you evaluate here the digital payment, again, compare different social demographic characteristics, what we see, there's a predominance of the people to use this service in urban area, youngers and male. But for me, the clear division here is between social class. In upper class, we see 65% of internet users from class AB, from the upper classes, those who have a higher socioeconomic status, connect to use this kind of service. It means they harnesses this kind of opportunity, this economic opportunity. But in class D, what we see is represent only 10, 11%. So we see clearly those who are in lower economic position, or those, for example, has not used this kind of financial service, this type of financial service. And the next slide show the main outputs of logistic regression, particularly the odds ratio. And what we can see is that, first of all, we see clearly the effect of socioeconomic and gender inequality effects. It means men and those with class AB, or say those with higher economic status, or those, for example, has higher likelihood to use digital payment. When you evaluate in terms of device used to connect to the internet, what we see clearly is that those who use only through mobile device, not necessarily are those, for example, that enjoy or harnesses this kind of financial service. We see clearly that we have those who combine computers with mobile, or those show higher likelihood to use this kind of payment. But the third one, what we see is the importance of digital skills. You see all the dimensions, but in particularly information communication, impact positively in the use, or in the likelihood to use this type of financial services here. So in terms of the main results, just summary, what we see in the table is that, first of all, we have the idea or the sample availability of internet access considered only through mobile device in Brazil, or at least at the moment. We have to consider that this data reflects Brazil before the pandemic. We see this is insufficient to boost digital payment use. And this sounds common if you analyze from the digital divide lens, because, for example,
this is the minute reminder.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay, no problem. What we see is that in the digital divide literature, we see clearly that the use exclusively through mobile is constantly related to is negatively related for a capital enhanced activity. It means activities relate for a socio-economic benefits or socio-economic outcomes, for example, financial service, education, and so on. The second point here is the relevance of the knowledge barrier. That's one point that's not very common mentioned in the literature, but here you see the knowledge barrier. Those who develop have a higher level of digital skills normally are those who harnesses this kind of opportunity. And the final idea here is we see the contradictory role of mobile one. Mobile device is one opportunity, for example, to increase number of internet users, but used exclusively this device is negatively related, for example, the use of digital payment. And just to clarify and finish the presentation, what we see in terms of theoretical contribution, we see the relevance, or it's our results shows the potential relevance to digital divide lengths to analyze the adoption of digital payment in the context of developed country. In the terms of practical implications, what we see is that they show clearly a challenge for financial institutions in order to create or develop financial services more adequate and precise to the reality of this low-income group. That's the main point I have to say. I'm sorry that I'm the first one to not respect the time, but thank you very much for your attention. That's it.